Hello, Udens. I have travelled to this strange, filthy dimension to educate your god emperorless heathens in the mystery and the wild theories about all things in the Ashtron gaming universe. I've decided to make this because after number 1000, the big one, things have really been ramping up. We've got a lot of people involved. It's slowed down a bit now, but I wrote this script when everyone was murdering each other, so without further ado, my curry scoopers, let's get into this thing. The Zuma Zone. Italy was a German puppet state. This theory states that Italy was never an independent state, and that since the 1930s it had secretly been controlled by Nazi Germany. Most historians believe that this theory came in about 1945 when the Italian meme uprising happened, and quickly after it had been put down, Italy had been integrated into Germany. Many people thought this happened a bit too quickly, and so this theory was born. D-29 abandonment. In 2029, the Ashtron Empire started building a new armoured vehicle called the D-29, and they mass-produced it in the hundreds, but strangely, no recordings of it ever have been used surfaced, leading many people to believe that for some strange reason, it was abandoned without a trace. Well, not a trace, just no records of the abandoned. Dog, what am I even saying? Kekistani genocides. The Kekistan genocides are referring to the first meme crusade in 2005 and the second meme crusade of 2056, both of which are well known as real events. The reason the genocide theory exists is that no one has heard of the groups the Kekistanis went against. Very suspicious. Hentai division. Many scavenged documents from the Empire of Japan refer to a top-secret group of soldiers known as the Hentai Division. For how long they operated and for what operations they were involved in is still unknown, but it is known that their presence was feared among their enemies. 7/11. Many people from Kekistan seem to remember a terrorist attack on the 7th of September 2011, but no such event ever occurred. Poll data collected in 2034 found out that 30% of the entire Kekistani population at the time thought that this happened. The reason for this is unknown. Nazi alien tech. Pretty self-explanatory. Not long after the Roswell incident, the Reich took over the United States and got a hold of everything related to the crash site. Conspiracy theorists say that this is the main reason that Germany was able to create such advanced technology after World War II that Japan couldn't keep up with, because the aliens helped them. Sorta. The missing Stinginator. Once upon a time, Angus built himself a truck he called the Stinginator, but it has not been seen after 2030. Angus himself refuses to mention it, and no records of it exist after 2030 either. Ashtronian Public Broadcasting. This refers to the APB television station that exists all over the Ashtron Empire, and many of the strange, weird and creepy TV shows that came out of it, such as Mr. Crack Rabbit, The Murdoch Super Show and Don Don's Playhouse. Many Ashtronians also remember strange shows that have been lost to time, but in recent years, online communities have popped up dedicating to finding these lost shows. The Eshe Smoko Zone. The original crew of the rover. The rover was the personal sailing ship of Ashtron Gaming. According to AshtronTower.com, it had been encased in ice for over 300 years when Ashtron Gaming found it. Strangely enough, the vessel had no skeletons in it or near it, creating the mystery of where the crew went and why they were not on their ship. The Falmer High Wizards. The Falmer High Wizards were a group of snow elves with remarkably high magic power that were responsible for acting as advisors and aides to High Queen Katie. But even though they were all put in this position of trust, none of the High Wizards have ever remained loyal. This raises two questions. How is the High Queen still alive? And how did the High Wizards become so untrustworthy? Japan weeaboo brainwashing. During the 20th century, many non-Japanese people living across the world started worshipping the Japanese, their culture, and their anime. The German SS saw this as a possible attempt at creating sleeper agents or getting people outside the Japanese Empire to side with them. Unfortunately for the Japanese, weeaboos often put more people against the Japanese than with them. ABC-4. For decades, there has been a rumour floating around that there is a fourth branch of the Ashtron Broadcasting Corporation that shows war footage and horror movies. Although it has been mentioned once or twice by military officials, its existence has never been confirmed. Anime subliminal messaging. Pretty much what the name says. According to some documents found in Manila, Japanese state-sponsored animes had subliminal messages that turned people into weeaboos or attempted sleeper agents. Sub-Level 6. I couldn't find much about this theory, although many people think it's related to Project Osborne, which is its whole other thing. Yeah, you can research that if you want some spooky stuff. The New York Resistance's bad flag. I mean, seriously, look at this thing. I can't believe I created that. Promyth. Promyth is the top agent in the Ashtronian Secret Service. Who they are and what they have done is highly classified and will probably never be known to the public. Joseph Marlowe is the Weeknd. This one's pretty much confirmed. I mean, look at the two. They are the exact same people. They look exactly the same. No denying it. The Greg Zone. Nazis funded the Islamic State of India. Pretty normal proxy war stuff. The ISI went to war against the Japanese-backed India, and so the Germans gave them stuff. There's plenty evidence for it, so most people see this as a fact. The Donut Man. I honestly have no idea about this. I couldn't find anything. The Bodies of Victory City. When Victory City, formerly Seattle, was still under construction in the early 2030s, thousands of bodies were found in an underground car park. Now, this is pretty normal for a pre-war city ruins, but the sheer amount of bodies that were found were 3 times more than they were expecting to find, and to add to the strangeness, many of the corpses had been killed in strange ways, such as having their heads twisted 180 degrees, and from smoke inhalation, despite there being no signs of a fire nearby. The Okeanos Genocide. In the early 21st century, the Okeanos Empire controlled much of North America's west coast and a few islands in the Pacific. When the Ashtron Empire started expanding, they came into conflict, and most of them were wiped out. Not the Ashtronians, that is. The False Gods. Yellow Blue Man, Lady Almalexia, and Sothasil claim to be gods, but not everyone thinks so. They are pretty powerful though. The Dagon City Mall. The Dagon City Mall is a large shopping centre located in the Resdayn, formerly Margot, capital of Dagon City. The mystery here is how it has stayed in business when everyone who works there are mind-controlled slaves, and everyone who shops there are mind-controlled slaves. Nut found in rocks. Oh yeah, that's just Greg. Greg loves rocks. Snooper. Snooper was a complex code system used by the Nazi Space Force during the Great Soul War in the 2040s and 50s. It was much like Enigma, but with some pretty big differences. It is so hard to crack that even today it still has not been solved. The Shadow Realm. The Shadow Realm is one of the worst places to be sent, but unfortunately for Gucci Mane Snoke, he has to live there now. Jokes aside, not much is publicly known about this place except that it's where powerful people send their enemies for all eternity, where not even death can save them. God Slayer's Parents. Godslayer's parents are still a mystery to historians, but we do know that one came from Asgard and the other came from Olympus. This led to a theory that Godslayer could potentially be Ashtron Gaming's half-brother, although that is unlikely. Vorkuta Zone. Hitler's secret family. Couldn't find much about this theory, but what I could find had something about Hitler having a secret girlfriend who he had kids with, and thus creating a secret Hitler family. Whether this family is still around today is a mystery, but let's hope not for the sake of everyone on the planet. Southern tribes vanished. During the second major expansion of the Ashtron Empire in 2030, the Ashtronian Royal Army came across many tribes in South Africa who simply vanished when the area was revisited. Where they all went is still not known. Many stingy people claim that they were genocided. Ashtron Gaming would never do that, allegedly. Vault 14 still operational. Vault 14 was an advanced bomb shelter that was built under Frankfurt in Germany, and it was meant to be the meeting point for high-level Nazi command, in case of a nuclear war. Despite its high-profile status, the vault still has not been found, and this led to a theory that Nazi high command is still down there somewhere, waiting for the right time to emerge. Gucci God hologram. Some people think that Gucci God is too old to be the bangin' rapper he is, so they try and claim that he must be a hologram. This one is just wrong. Gucci God slays, and he will continue to slay until he is about 111 years old, probably longer. If the life support equipment gets more advanced, he will continue slaying forever. Zan's girlfriend loved him. Oh, yeah, that's definitely not true. She was just a gold digger. No doubt about this one. This one's pretty much debunked. Nazis hiding in Spain. After the collapse of New Rome during the First Order War, Spain formed the Second Spanish Kingdom. Since it was very similar to the First Spanish Kingdom, which were allies with Nazi Germany, many people have theorized that this is a prime location for hidden Nazis hiding out from the rest of the world. Communists of the 4chan Reich. This theory states that the 4chan Reich has some hidden communist agenda, despite them being pretty much 100% fascist and they all hate commies. I have no idea why this one exists. Command OS. Command OS is the operating system used by all Ashtronian military computers, and thus is top secret to civilians. The sheer amount of secret information that could be accessed if it were released to the public would be limitless. It is also notable for its strange functions and security features. Big Man Tyrone Puppet. According to a Nazi report created during the Great Soul War, when Big Man Tyrone was captured from his mansion by the SS, they found him sleeping with a small puppet that looked exactly like him. Although this is unconfirmed, there have been rumours on the internet message boards about photos of this puppet existing. The Resonance Zone, Phyllis. Artificial Sped Forest. There are many people out there that claim that the Sped Forest in the Ashtron Empire was not in fact created by radiation and mutant plants, but instead that it was planned by the Ashtronian government for the purpose of dumping high-profile prisoners there. Supposedly, people have come forward claiming that they worked on the project, but none of their stories have been confirmed for now. Olympus Mons 3. There was an Olympus Mons 1, and there was an Olympus Mons 2. So people think that the Nazi Space Force was secretly building an Olympus Mons 3 just before they lost this Great Soul War. Probably true. We haven't found it yet. Maybe it was just in the planning stage. Vivek is from Realm TES-5. Realm TES-5 is a mini-dimension filled with weird magic people, elves, dragons, and lots more fantasy things. Vivek, also known as Yellow Blue Man, fits in with these themes pretty well, so a lot of people think that he must originate from there or have some sort of connection to it. Israel, quote unquote. This is a theory about some place called Israel. It doesn't exist, and that's what the theory's about. What is Israel, and why doesn't it exist? Why don't we live in a world with something called Israel? Something must have happened to make it not exist. The swords of Vinum Terram. Vinum Terram, or Terram, or whatever you want to say, was the only North American settlement created by the Roman Empire. Everything about the excavated ruins screams Roman, and there are references to the settlements in Roman documents. So everything in this place is Roman, except the swords. The swords found at this place are unlike any other sword from the time, leading others to question where they came from. They had a unique style, a unique way of being forged that we still haven't cracked yet, and most of all, unique characters written on the blades. The disappearance of Werner 1. Werner 1 was the first ever object sent into space by humans, more specifically the Germans. It floated around the planet before vanishing in 1973. It was strange seeing such a famous object vanish from the radar, which created a few theories about it being shot down by the Japanese or taken by Atlanteans in space. One of those theories is more likely than the other, but I ain't gonna tell you which one. Apostates of Ashtron Gaming. The apostates of Ashtron Gaming referred to a small group of rebels within the Outback Ranges who refused to work with Ashtron Gaming at all, due to their hatred of religion and holy figures. The conspiracy here comes in when people noticed that none of the apostates had survived the rebel years, leading to some people thinking they had been taken out from within, ironically to prevent infighting. Gay Hux. Armitage Hux has never been seen with a woman, so he must be gay, right? 3 Jadanas theory. Grand Admiral Jadana of the First Order has miraculously survived many decades after his major defeat in the First Order War, though he is dead now. He just died a few days ago. So it surprises a lot of people when they find out that he is still alive, which he isn't. He has survived the First Order War and the Great Soul War, and has been captured after both, but he always manages to slip away. This led to a theory that the real Jadana died in the Sped Forest, and that every time he has resurfaced, it's actually an imposter. Let's hope he doesn't resurface now, because I'm pretty sure he is actually dead. The real Kekistani Blitz. Again, this is one of the theories I couldn't find much about, but I know it has something to do with unusual damage patterns during the Kekistani Blitz. It didn't match up with reports or bombings or the type of bomb they use or something like that. I'm not really sure, but hey.
God damn, my mic's so high quality, but it is so quiet.
The Murdoch Zone. The NAV Project. The NAV Project was the Ashtron Empire military's attempt to make a naval assault vehicle which has nothing weird about it on the surface, but when people found out how long it took, it raised some eyebrows. It took the Ashtron Empire about 40 years to create a naval assault vehicle, which is just weird because they're essential in modern combat. So how have they fought so many wars without one until now? Gerbert the Jesus Puppet and the Crack Rabbit. Couldn't find anything about these again, but might have been shows on Ashtronian public broadcasting because of the Crack Rabbit thing. But either way, boy, they're creepy. Sector 1 Dwellers. Vault 42 was a fallout shelter built in eastern Siberia that was divided up into 5 different sectors, with each sector holding 1,000 people. Now, the creepy thing here is that prior to entering the deeper parts of the vault, people had one of their 5 senses disabled. Sector 1, remove sight. Sector 2 were deaf, and so on and so on. The people in Sector 1 became blind psychopaths, and after a major earthquake in the area caused by the Battle of New Germania, the vault cracked open, and the Sector 1 dwellers were released on the rest of the vault. We only know this because a few local explorers had to seal up the vault door because they feared the Pale People. Redeemer and the Moon. During the Battle of Vapors in 2051, Ashtron Gaming smashed the moon into a few large chunks in order to kill the Nazis that lived there. But as Ashtron Gaming deny as always do, they created a theory that this was not Ashtron Gaming who cracked the moon, but a stolen First Order Eclipse-class Star Destroyer that was hijacked by Ashtronian forces during the First Battle of New Athens. Since the ship had a small super laser, it was perfectly capable of such a feat. The only problem with this theory is that the Redeemer was destroyed in space a few years prior to the Battle of Vapors. If we still had it, we would have used it a lot more, on a lot more secret bases that we knew the location of, we just couldn't get to them. The False Koreans. After more than 90 years of Japanese occupation in Korea, many people saw the Korean people as non-existent, since Korea was culturally identical to Japan by the late 1990s, due to decades of Japanese settlement and colonization. Although there were still people who called themselves Korean, most of these people were either old or rebellious teenagers looking for something else to identify, to all have some big sense of community. Oh, you're Korean, I'm Korean too. After the Great War of 1999, it was still in Japanese hands for a further 45 years before it was briefly occupied by the new dynasty in China. Not long after this, the new dynasty split apart like China always does, and the United Provinces of Korea was proclaimed. The inhabitants all called themselves Koreans, despite most of them not being from Korean bloodlines, or some of them not even being from Korea. So many people think that this is just full of Japanese people LARPing as Koreans for culture points. The Don's identity. The Don is a mysterious lich lord which leads the Don Immortalis in former Russia. In recent times, the Don has been causing a lot of chaos around the world, and the worst part is no one knows who they are. There are many different theories about the Don's identity, and I will list a few here. A Sped Lord? Apparently he controls Speds or something, or maybe all his followers are Speds. Ned Kelly, Stalin, Lenin, Trotsky, Frank Horrigan, General Benton Crawford, and Mr. Meme. I personally think it's Mr. Meme. The Stinged Quisitors. After the First Order remnants were accepted into the terrorist group known as Al-Manhadan, they started kidnapping some special children to turn into dark warriors called Stinged Quisitors. Not much is known about them, and little to no footage of them in combat has ever surfaced on the web, so we really don't know much. God damn, I hate reading our scripts. The Jib Zone. Noir. Chills is a Nazi superweapon. Alright, so Chills is a mysterious ice elemental and an alternate universe version of Ashtron Gaming from another dimension, who first came into contact with people from our universe during the Battle of Baja. Some say that Chills is in fact a Nazi superweapon meant to get close to Ashtron Gaming and assassinate him. This theory is pretty much debunked at this point, since Chills and Ashtron Gaming are good friends, and Chills has had about 20 years to kill him at this point, and it still hasn't happened. Oompa Loompa Magic. No one knows how the Oompa Loompas have survived this long, so they must be using magic, right? But Oompa Loompas wouldn't have been liked by the Japanese, and especially the Nazis, since they're small, tribal, dark-skinned, and, I don't know, the Nazis just didn't like people. So the fact that they managed to exist on their island undisturbed for, I don't know, millions of years probably, has to be some sort of magic, right? They must have fought off Japanese explorers or something. They were just hanging out in Papua New Guinea. So, why hasn't anyone dogged them yet? The Ghosts of Tigris Gulf. The Battle of the Tigris Gulf was a very bloody battle from the First Order War that resulted in the deaths of every Kekistani that was involved in it. Because of all these deaths, many people have reported seeing the ghosts of the soldiers when they revisit the site of the battle. The most common ghost seen at the battlefield is the Black Spirit, which is normally seen on the coast, walking across the beach next to the waves. The Nightmen of Richmond. In the former United States city of Richmond, which is not located on East Island, it's now located on East Island. Oh, thanks, scriptwriter, for bad spelling. There have been sightings of mysterious figures roaming around in the hills and empty skyscrapers located around the city. At first, people just saw them as strange zombies and didn't question it, since anyone living on East Island definitely had bigger problems to worry about. But after the Richmond settlement was set up, people started relaxing a bit, and it dawned on them how strange these figures were. They were completely black with glowing eyes, and they only ever came out at night. Even after the island was reconnected with the mainland and the zombies killed off, the figures are still seen to this day by urban explorers. Zombies of Vault 7. Vault 7 was a fallout shelter built in New York for the purposes of sheltering high-ranking Nazi officers and important civilians. But after New York was burned to the ground and overrun with zombies in the 1970s, Vault 7 became a mystery. Some people believe that it's just filled with some of the last remaining New York zombies, while others think it holds the descendants of Nazis who still live down there. Most people just think Vault 7 is either empty or caved in at this point. The Ghost Tank. The Ghost Tank was a glowing phantom Soviet T-34 that was seen all throughout the Great Soul War in the battlefields of northern Kekistan. It was seen so commonly by civilians and soldiers alike that its existence was seen as fact. It has been written about in thousands of wartime journals and reports say that it's now seen as an icon. It is seen so much by the 3rd Kekistani Armoured Division that they have made it their official emblem. The Highwaymen Genocide. The Highwaymen were one of the biggest groups of raiders ever known that could be seen all over North America for about 30 years after the Great War. They were known to control vast amounts of land and resources, and they were the biggest threat to the Ashtron Empire in the early years. Which brings us to Operation Babylon in 2035, where the Ashtron Empire, along with the Republic of Kekistan and the Second Dank American Republic, basically waged war against the Highwaymen in a bid to crush them completely. Needless to say, this worked, and the Highwaymen were basically gone by the end of it, which means people called it a genocide. The Flight of Vesp V6. During the Battle of the Ring in the Soul War, pilot and ex-Nazi J-Rod managed to take out a Nazi mothership by flying his Vesper directly into it, which killed him in the process. Usually, the Mengele Vogels were protected by a shield that covered the entire plane, but strangely, it was never activated this time. The official story is that because J-Rod was an ex-Nazi and using a Nazi aircraft, the shield never saw it as a threat and thus never activated, but not everyone believes this, leading some people to say that it was an inside job. Inside jobs of planes hitting things. I don't get that reference because I'm from another universe. The Man on the Blimp. On a foggy morning in New York during the 1962 New Year's Festival, a man was spotted on top of one of the German parade blimps. Numerous people on the ground saw it, and people in the building spotted him from all the way up there, and it generated enough concern that the Luftwaffe deployed a plane to see if the claims were true. Allegedly, the pilot reported seeing the man jump from the blimp, but after that he was not seen again. No body was ever found, and it's left people wondering whether the entire event actually happened or not. J-Rod still alive. This one kind of connects to the flight of the Vesper V6, since it's about the same event. J-Rod was the ex-Nazi pilot who sacrificed himself to destroy the giant Nazi plane, and some people think it was a staged event to inspire the Ashtronian troops who hadn't had a very good time up until then, fighting the Battle of the Ring. Some people believe that J-Rod quickly ejected from his seat before the plane collided with the Nazi one, and where he is today, if he's still alive, is still a mystery. Society Zone. The hidden zombie apocalypse. At the end of the Great Solar War, the destruction of the Eurotropa dams and the refreezing of Antarctica caused the sea levels to lower significantly, which reconnected the infamous East Island to the North American mainland. Now, it's well known that East Island was abandoned by most of its human inhabitants after it was overrun with zombies, so you'd think that this reconnection caused some international outbreak event, but strangely no. There were only a few containment operations, and that was the end of it, officially. Some people theorized that the containment was a lot worse than anyone would have thought, and it was basically a hidden zombie apocalypse for all those involved. Their excuse for the secrecy is that the Ashtron Empire did not want to cause a major panic right after the last big war had just ended. The man from Ascension. I'm bad. In 2054, a man showed up at the New Athens Air and Spaceport, claiming to be from the city of Asuncion in Paraguay. Paraguay. When asked how he was in New Athens despite the Ashtron Empire having no formal relations with the Second Paraguay Republic, he got confused and mentioned about how he had never heard of the Ashtron Empire, and how he was in the nation of Mexico. The man was detained for questioning, and after a search of his luggage, the airport officials discovered many strange items, such as modern Mexican currency, a stamped passport from the First Paraguay Republic, which had collapsed in the 1950s, and a postcard from New York which showed it as still being controlled by the United States government, which collapsed after the Second World War. After spending a night in custody, the man mysteriously vanished and has not been heard from since. The Rook Island Creature. In 2064, a wasteland sailor from New Holland was sailing past the Rook Islands in the dead of night as to not attract the attention of the infamous pirates that live there. And that's when, from out of the water, they saw what the captain described as a large oceanic humanoid. In Dutch, of course. The creature looked directly at the crew and did the most terrifying smile a human could imagine. After that, it vanished under the waves and was not seen for a while. What makes this weirder is that the creature has been seen many different times all over the globe. In 2060, a self-proclaimed mutant hunter mentioned an identical creature while recounting stories on an internet message board. He too mentioned the worst part of the encounter being the smile that the creature gave him after appearing. The space terrorists of Realm Y02 Mexican. Realm Y02 Mexican takes the appearance of a solid endless white void, except for the center, which is the location of a miniature stage that contains 5 different environments. Each environment is meant to simulate the home world of its inhabitant. The realm is home to only 6 beings, 5 of which are violent interdimensional terrorists. The inhabitants are Muno, a slender red cyclops that was responsible for the destruction of over 70 different planets and realms. Fufa, a flower-like alien who caused the dimensional rift of 69 BC. Broby, a smaller green alien with large arms who was responsible for the death of 3 high Elferian priests. Tudi, a half-cat, half-dragon creature who drained the oceans of the banking realm Kortos 9, a cosmic crime. Plex, a yellow robot who was the mastermind behind the 345 AD Cornpocalypse. And, last but not least, DJ Lance, the warden of the realm. He was the best officer of the Inter-Realm Anti-Crime Unit and the leading figure in the arrests of all 5 criminals. He will spend the rest of his immortal life watching over these criminals in their prison. Interdimensional Rift of the 1930s. Hey Will, the Second American Civil War has quite a few similarities to something else that you know I have a certain dislike towards. The Phantom Zone. The Dark Times. The Dark Times refer to the crisis of 2069, as it was literally the darkest time in human history, because the demons sent by Dark Golb blocked out the sun. Humanity came closest to being wiped out than we have been since that giant ancient volcano eruption in caveman times. Basically, since so much chaos has been caused in our universe, the god of everything, Shrek, decided to start anew and started killing off the universe by draining it of energy and by Golb releasing demons everywhere. But I'm sure you all already knew this. No one can really forget it. It affected everyone in the universe. And it was like only, a year ago? Yeah. The Red Tower Theory. The Red Tower Theory states that the Earth is a vital component to the universe, and that if Earth was ever destroyed, then the entire universe would come crumbling down with it. The evidence for this is that Earth was most likely the first planet ever formed if Shrek, God, wasn't lying, and the lesser gods all ruled over humans, and only small minor ones had anything to do with aliens or other planets. And of course, since Ashtron Gaming, the dude who killed God, but consensually for the people of the universe, he was born and lives on Earth, and one can interpret this as meaning that Earth is pretty much the center of the universe, both literally and metaphorically now. The Thunderbirds. During the first few years after the Great War, many people reported seeing giant black birds in the skies all over the world, and they were never seen in trees or on the ground, only flying high above those below, which led many people to either claim that they are radiation-induced hallucinations or weird death spirits or something that came to the Earth to eat the dead corpses of all the Great War victims. Both theories are very different but equally plausible. Make sure the Kaiser is dead. Yes, we don't want this to be real. Oh, I hate Kaiser so much. Please. Phantom Soldiers. Phantom Soldiers were a commonly seen apparition during the Great Soul War. They were seen by all sides in almost every battle and campaign throughout the entire war. They have completely black skin with glowing white eyes, and they've been seen wearing uniforms from all factions involved. They have some intelligence to them, as they have been seen responding to commands, giving hand signs and waving to other soldiers, but they never speak. They seem to vanish whenever eye contact is broken.